with a key Republican in the House, Congressman Steve King, Republican of Iowa. Congressman, it's great to see you. Thank you so much for joining me this morning. So as Jim Acosta was laying out the potential, the threat of what will happen if the nation hits the debt ceiling, what are you concerned about? Are you concerned about the potential economic crisis that could be caused if we pass this deadline on Thursday, because we are in the 11th hour now?
Well, I'm not worried about this thing that they term default, because we are going to service our debt. We're going to pay the interest first, and we'll roll the principal over. It takes 8% of our revenue stream on average in order to pay the interest on our debt. So a well-managed national funding stream will be just fine. But I am concerned about all the rhetoric around this, about the weeks and months building up to this point and the utilization of that term default. And I'm concerned that it will scare the markets. I'm concerned that the president's remarks on this will scare the markets. So I don't know what happens when we get to tomorrow and maybe midnight tomorrow as to whether there will be a dramatic reaction or not.
Then what do you make of when the credit rating company Fitch is threatening to downgrade the nation's credit rating? That just came out yesterday, and you're not worried about that?
Well, of course I'm concerned about it, and if we watch what happened the last time, there was a threat, and we raised the debt ceiling, and then our credit rating was downgraded after we raised the debt ceiling, not before. And so you would think that if debt ceiling would give us a better credit rating, that would have happened in the opposite way.
But what about all the other things that we need to be focusing on? Not just, paying the interest on our debt is very important, but the other things, you know the list. We've talked about this. We've got a big Social Security payment coming up. We've got Medicare, Medicaid, veterans benefits. All of these things are being threatened right now. How do you prioritize that?
Well, actually, all of those things that you mentioned, we would have the revenue stream to pay.
You believe that?
I do. But I think we'll get down into that point where it gets really, really tough in a relatively short period of time. It isn't something that happens at midnight tomorrow night, but it's something incrementally where we're bringing in about 60% of the money that we're spending. So over time, this will squeeze these accounts down, and it's a matter probably not days, but probably of weeks. It would be how I'd estimate it.
Why do you even want to get there? I need to understand, and I know that American people want to understand right now. This is go time. Where do you stand? What are you willing to pass? What are you willing to pass?
My stand is there's two things that I would put on the table and say, let's go down one path or the other, or even both. The first one is, and I'm not alone on this, but it's not been pushed very hard, a balanced budget amendment to our Constitution.
Not going to happen right now. You know that.
Yeah, not today anyway. It takes a little bit to push that, and not next week. But if that passed out of the House and the Senate, it takes a 2/3 majority. They came within one vote of getting that done in 1995. Had that happened, we wouldn't be having this discussion today.
Very different makeup of Congress right now. You know that.
It is, and I think that we have a lot of prudent conservatives there that would follow on this.
Maybe an admirable goal. We're hours out from a deadline.
But setting that aside.
Setting that aside. Is there anything that can come over from the Senate that you're going to pass? We know the contours of what's being negotiated. Be honest with me here.
Let's take a good, serious look at the entitlement spending, and let's put a plan in place to get that under control. If we fail to do that, and the expression "kick the can down the road," kick it down the road, at a certain point, our children are having their children, and they're still in a greater and greater debt. If we're not willing to take a stand, if we're not willing to take a stand now, when will we take that stand? We've watched this thing move ahead for us and watched our debt go up by more than $1 trillion a year on average each year of this presidency. I
hear you're standing by your principles, but I'm also hearing you say basically there pretty much isn't anything that's going to come out of the Senate or the House that you're going to vote for.
And not in the next 36 hours, I don't expect will be the case. And so that means then that if the Senate, put this in quotes, jams the House and sends a bill over that rolls in the CR and into the debt ceiling together, then the Speaker has to make a decision on whether he will take that up or whether he'll refuse to take it up.
I want to ask you about Speaker Boehner. This has really unraveled in spectacular fashion in a very public way, and people have been watching this very closely. Do you support Speaker John Boehner and how he's handled this? Do you support him still today?
I'll say generally yes, and I've made those remarks on almost a daily basis since this thing began.
But yesterday seemed to change things for some folks.
Well, here's the situation, is that, he's in a box now, but one of the things that have happened is that they put an offer on the table, the House Republicans, Speaker Boehner, and then Harry Reid rejected it, then another offer, another offer, another offer. Actually, 4 offers out there before we started into the incremental financing component of this, and the President and Harry Reid have refused to negotiate it each step of the way. And so what we should have really done, and this is what I argued for, is don't give a second offer. Just say, my offer's on the table, and until you come with a counteroffer, we're done talking.
And he didn't have support. It unraveled yesterday. Conservatives wouldn't give him anything. Moderates started falling off the boat.
But
he's got nothing.
This is, what, the 12th or 13th proposal altogether. And he is in a place now where he narrowed it up to where there's nothing left now except maybe a tiny little difference between the House's offer and Harry Reid's position, which was my way or the highway.
This is reminding me of a line that I hear a lot covering Capitol Hill whenever we're in the middle of a big crisis. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. It seems that's exactly what you're doing here.
We're so far away from what's perfect. I think the American public has lost track of
what is the American people getting out of this, Congressman? Right now, all they see is the government is still shut down. They're threatening to hit this debt ceiling, and what they're going to get is just going to be a 2 or 3 month patch, and we're going to be right back here.
Here's what the American people get out of Barack Obama's proposal and Harry Reid's proposal: perpetual debt, perpetual increasing deficits, perpetual government managed health care.
Your Republican colleagues want to get out of this bind more than anything.
Do you think that's the case? Do you think that the American people, and this is a decision it's worthy of discussion, are the American people more interested in getting rid of the argument here and accepting whatever comes after that, or do they want to see fiscal responsibility?
I think they want to see fiscal responsibility. Of course they do, but not.
And there's a price to be paid for that, though. I mean, you have to hold your ground at some point. Is Harry Reid's not interested in fiscal responsibility? Barack Obama surely is not. He's interested in borrowing more money and spending more money.
The price to pay, though, isn't being paid by you or anyone in that building. It's being paid by everyone else outside of that building.
Here's what you know, though. I think we have to agree this. If this conservative Republican plan had been implemented 5 years ago, say at the inception of what is now the Obama presidency, we would have far less debt and deficit. We wouldn't be in this situation today, and the American people would say, good, we're glad that you took a sacrifice in the short term, so in the long term we're better off. And if we see interest rates rocket up, I'm not as concerned about our credit rating as I am interest rates. They could easily double. We're at historically low interest rates. This 8% of our revenue stream now that it takes just to pay the debt, the interest on the debt, that could double. It could go 2.5 times in a matter of months. And then where are we? And we go back and revisit this conversation, and then they'll say, Republicans, why didn't you stand stronger and longer? I
want to get too quick. I need to talk strategy because I want to know where things go today. Is the House going to vote today? Do you have any indication they will?
I don't have an indication they will at this point. I don't know if John Boehner wakes up this morning with another new idea. I don't have a new idea that I can offer to him this morning. So if Harry Reid decides to move and jam us, then Speaker Boehner has to decide, am I going to bring it to the House?
One key factor in that is Senator Ted Cruz. I believe you were at that meeting that everyone's talked so much about at Tortilla Coast.
If I hope it was a secret meeting that they all talk about.
Or not so secret. What are you hearing? Where is he? What's he going to do? Do you know his strategy?
You know, I think that he would speak to the press if he wanted a strategy to be discussed. But I'll say this, that he made some strong good points. He's taken a leadership position on this from a fiscally responsible and constitutional perspective. I think a lot of Ted Cruz and those who have taken a stand in the Senate, if they hadn't done that, it'd be redundant for the House almost to do so. I will say something that concerns me is that and I'm not speaking of Ted Cruz, but I speak to a lot of conservatives, the discussion that's going on about the question of would the president refuse to pay the interest on our debt if we get past midnight on tomorrow night? That one is chilling to me, to think that we're actually having discussions on whether the president would essentially willfully default on our debt. That's the only way that happens.
I don't think the president would ever willfully default on the debt. I think you know that. But are there any measures left? Are there any tricks in the toolbox left? That's something that we don't know. One thing that I think is for sure that people are concerned about is we're in uncharted territory. We don't know what's going to happen if we walk off the cliff. I don't know if we want to be there.
Well, I think that if, say we get to tomorrow and they declare that they're out of the means to borrow money, I actually don't believe it's a hard break tomorrow. It's just a date they picked on the calendar, and we expected this to come maybe as far back as last May. Some discussion about it being June or the 22nd of July.
Congress would have only been working all the way to this point to avoid this starting back.
But seriously, he's delayed it off. And so we are where we are today, and I don't think it's a hard break. I'm more concerned about market reaction than I am default itself, and I think the markets will adjust. Smart money always adjusts in the right direction.
Smart money would also like Congress to do its job, but we're going to talk more about this later. Congressman, great to see you. Thanks for coming in, as always.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for having me back on the Hill.
It is a beautiful morning out here.
It is actually a very beautiful morning out here. We're going to